to be great at the 800 meters and the 1500 meters. We may have learned after Meet One of Grand Slam track that isn't easy at all. Meet One in Kingston, Jamaica featured one of the most anticipated races of all, a matchup between 800 meter and 1500 meter runners over both distances over 2 days. And the field was a strong one, including all three Olympic 1500 meter medalists, the gold and silver 800 meter medalists. And out of these races, I feel like we may have learned something. Now, it is a long track season this year, and it's hard to stay sharp all year round. It's hard to know exactly how athletes were treating races like this and how much training/tapering was going on. It was also the first race of the season, not saying it was a low stakes race with the rewards and also being the inaugural Grand Slam track event, but rather it's common for athletes to get some rust busters out of the way or maybe experiment with different tactics before really finding form. And for the 800 meter runners, not exactly sure how much they were preparing for the 1500 altogether, because being a great 800 runner certainly doesn't always mean you'll be great at the metric mile. And some 800 meter specialists really do specialize in the 2 lap distance, which some would say is the shortest distance race. And some would say it is a really long sprint with how fast you're going, the tendency to have a positive split aspect of the race, etc. I think in the 800, which is something we'll talk about later, that you can see the 1500 meter runners really weren't too up for a challenge. Hang back, even though the finishing time wasn't something super duper fast. But we'll start with the 1500 meters, where it was a bit of a reversal, as all but one 800 runner was not up in the front here. But the one 800 runner who was made a big statement, beating not only one, not only two, but all three Olympic medalists from Paris 2024. And his name was Emmanuel Wanyandi. The 800 meter Olympic champion in 2024, even though he's an 800 meter runner, he's got that aerobic foundation that actually isn't all that unfamiliar for 800 meter runners. Yes, the 800 meters has some anaerobic component to it. If you're going full throttle, it isn't easy to get through that second lap. But just thinking about the philosophy of Arthur Lydiard, for example, and how he had Peter Snell run 144 on grass, developing your aerobic capacity is something that can lead to success in the 800 meter distance. And Wanyagi seems to not only run decent mileage, but run at an altitude in Kenya. He runs cross country and mileage, so he has that strength background that should really help him move up in distance. And while this result at Grand Slam track may be a bit surprising when you have all three 1500 meter Olympic medalists in the race, and just with the way this 1500 meter race was run, going through the 800 split into flat and really preparing for a fast finish, it really was run right into the 800 meter speed Wanyagi has beyond the 800 meters. When you're thinking of kicks as great as some of these runners can kick, Wanyagi has his speed, at least this point in the season, at simply another level. I also think another talking point has to be the 800 and how that played out, because unlike the 1500 meters, we didn't see a 1500 meter runner best the 800 meter runners. And not just that, it wasn't even really that close essentially for the entire race. Not only did the 1500 meter group go through the 4 inches split, a lot slower than the 52 split by Marco Arop. I do think Arop had a great strategy, knowing this was his event and that he had to place well to maximize his placement at this slam, given his 1500 meter finish. He's a great runner who can run from the front, and thus splitting at 52 isn't super fast for these Olympic medalists. Arop, a silver medalist just behind the gold medalist Wanyagi at Paris, and none of the 1500 meter runners went with the pace. So this race didn't quite play out the same way, and Arop would win with Wanyagi in second. I think this may just show how difficult it is to be among the best in the world in both the 800 meters and the 1500 meters. Wanyagi showed he may be up there right now, but for the rest of the field that was competitive in the 1500, it wasn't a contest in the 800. And I think Grand Slam track also showed us that in addition to the difficulty of being really great at both the 800 and 1500, another aspect of the sport that will probably always be a key element of track running, and that is, well, tactical racing. And I mean, maybe there was one race that really showed tactical racing well, and that was the men's 5000. Now, one of the aspects of Grand Slam track is how it allows for a style of racing more like championship racing, at least on the distance running side of things. Competitors are simply focused on finishing the best they can relative to their other competitors, which can lead to more tactical races, which aren't necessarily that slow. Actually, there's different types of tactical races, team tactics, etc. All very interesting, but in essence, tactical races are different than, say, a time trial or paced races because your result isn't really based on the time you run. Placement matters, regardless of time. And at this meet in Kingston, we saw one great example of that tactical style of racing as this 5,000-meter race got out at a pace that can only be considered as not the fastest for some of the fastest 5,000-meter runners on the planet. Yet I think there's an interesting sort of intrigue to races like this. Because when you have all your runners bunched together and they're basically saving them all for the end to see who can close the race the fastest, there is always that unknown factor of how the kick in the race will play out, when it will happen, who will make the first move, and who will follow with moves of their own. In this race, Hako's Gemperwhite made a big move right as the group hit the bell, actually leaving behind Grant Fisher here. But even when there was only a lap to go, there's still some running left, and Fisher made up that ground. Fisher would win this with a 51-second last lap, Tier right behind with a great kick of his own, and Jacobs also with a great closing kick. The time, well, was not super fast for a professional 5K elite runner, over 2 minutes behind the world record in the 5K. Isn't exactly the fastest time for some of the top 5K runners in the world, but it's a time that certainly had a lot of intrigue to it. With tactical racing, you simply don't know what will happen because really, if it were, say, a 1250 race, some of these runners with great kicks may not be close to contention at the end. And I think we saw tactical racing play out in a way with the 3,000 that followed in the Grand Slam meet. Here, we saw a great example of team tactics, as instead of waiting around and possibly getting outkicked again, Hakos Geberwit and Telepun Pekele put a lead on the back that included runners that outkicked them in the 5,000. And this was an interesting strategy to see because it put a lot of responsibility on Fisher to win the race within the race, so to speak, if he wanted to win the slam, as Geberwit would be the winner of this 3K, and then he'd have to at least place third, which meant winning this group. With these races, well, it isn't just the guy who has the fastest capability of distance that finishes first. It's really who has not just the best leg speed, but the best tactics to use that leg speed at the right time. It's that combination of speed and timing that makes tactical races, like some of the races that we saw at Grand Slam track, actually really interesting to watch at the pro level. And it reminds running fans that while world records are great and all, there's something awesome about tactical racing too. And it is, in some sense, the real championship style of racing. Now, I know this isn't a meet where there's a world championship or Olympic medal on the line, so it may not be quite as interesting, but it's still a race with rewards for winning, and I think it gives a very cool insight with the athlete's abilities over the final lap. Now, I just want to give my thoughts on some of the racing that went down in Kingston for Grand Slam Track Meet 1. Obviously, I just really covered the long and short distance events on the men's side here. I do want to note also some interesting thoughts on sprints because, well, we got to see how fast the 110 hurdle runners are over the 100 flat and compare that to how fast Boulevard ultras are. And you actually realize that just as a comparable for the men, that Mondo Duplantis is very fast. He ran 10.37, by the way, the same time DK Metcalf ran, actually. Plus Warholm not too far back from that time with a 10.47. I know these guys are hurdlers and all, but it shows you how specialized you need to be really fast, and how you have some field athletes like Mondo that are just very fast. Overall, I'm not totally sure where Grand Slam track will go from Kingston. I'm sure people have their own thoughts on it overall, but I guess there's some things that can be learned watching a track meet with a different sort of format later.